Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Here we are again, and this time live on Facebook. All right. So, I'm talking today about nonviolent communication, a language of life, by Marshall Rosenberg, because I will be teaching for the next 4 weeks on Thursday nights. This is another language. We're not used to this. I'm not used to this language of nonviolent communication. And so it's really something that takes practice, but it's really so worthwhile. And yesterday, we had a great forgiveness retreat day. It was really wonderful, and it was the beginning of a process for many of us to work on forgiveness, and we learned a lot about it. And Roshi gave a great talk last week, but one of the commitments really that came out of that day yesterday was, and it's a vow that people who study the precepts here take, is to do no harm. It's the first pure precept that we study. Advanced members study that, to do no harm. So that was a big one to commit to for us yesterday at the forgiveness retreat. What does that mean in our life? How do we live it in our speech, in our attitudes, in our action? So when I was preparing for NVC, nonviolent communication, which we call compassionate communication here, I got interested in the word violence and what it means. And so I thought, yeah, we're living in a pretty violent city. And in fact, in 2015, the University of Illinois Political Sciences Department called Chicago the corruption capital of America. Mm-hmm. Corruption is certainly violence, and it plays itself out into, well, we see shooting. That's something we can measure. There's a lot of shooting violence in Chicago. By the early 2016, this year, Chicago had recorded more homicides and shooting victims than New York City and Los Angeles combined. It's like, wow. In October 2015, Jesse Jackson's PUSH organization called for President Obama to declare a state of emergency in Chicago over gun violence. So this do no harm is something that I think is, if we can commit to it and vow to live this, can make a huge difference in our lives and the lives of people we come into contact with. And this practice that we do of meditation helps us to keep this vow that we make. Arun Gandhi, in the foreword, the introduction to this book, Arun Gandhi is the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, the great Mahatma Gandhi. And he says violence is defined as doing no harm to one another.
As nonviolence.
violence is defined as doing harm to one another. Thank you. Yes, yes.
They
Right.
all knew.
Sorry,
That's good.
a little confusion.
And he tells the story of him growing up in apartheid South Africa in the 40s, and how he was brutally reminded of his skin color every moment. He was beat up by white kids for being too black, too dark, and he was beat up by black kids for being too light. And so he got into a pretty violent kind of a behavior. So when he was 13, his parents sent him to live with his grandfather in India to see if his grandfather could do something with this 13-year-old violent kid. And so he said he learned a lot from his grandfather in the, he was there for 18 months with his grandfather. And what he was learning was how to deal with his anger. So one of the things that his grandfather had him do, because he wanted him to learn about nonviolence, about violence. He wanted to learn what that was. And so his work was to to write everything down that he considered to be violent that happened in a day to him that he could see. And pretty soon, and he and his grandfather would go over it every night, and pretty soon his whole room was, with papers of all the violent things that he had seen or thought or did in his day. And this was a way of Gandhi having his son appreciate nonviolence. So we often think of ourselves as being pretty nonviolent here because we don't have an active war going outside our door, right? We're not involved in killing or shooting people, so we consider ourselves to be pretty nonviolent. However, there are other forms of violence that are not active or physical. There is passive violence, which is hurt that is more emotional. And it's this passive violence that fuels the fire of active violence. So let's think of some examples of passive violence. What would you say are examples of passive violence?
Discrediting another's worth.
Gossiping. Backbiting.
To use that word.
Again, came up yesterday. Right, that's a form of passive violence.
Not responding to a statement of prejudice or disrespecting someone else, not responding back to that.
Not speaking your truth in a way. Not speaking your truth is a passive form of violence. And responding to someone who is overtly or speaking. It's kind of active violence when somebody is talking out loud also about somebody else, or even to their face, or even raising their voice can be a form of active violence.
Making lewd or demeaning comments about another person.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Or ignoring someone in need.
Yes.
Ignoring someone in need is a passive form of violence.
Self-centeredness to the extreme.
Self-centeredness to the extreme. With withholding emotion, withholding emotional to with someone, support, emotional support, a kind of passive violence. What about shame? It's kind of a violence toward yourself, right? A passive violence, shame. Or what about inner criticism? That's another passive form of violence. Beating up yourself emotionally, that's a passive form of violence.
What would you call denial? So if you deny, you choose, or by habit, to ignore poverty that leads to violence. Is that part of passive violence also?
Sounds like it to me, kind of passive violence. It's like ignoring. It's good to, I think, really look at different forms of violence and then you can see, okay, I need to not do that anymore because that's really violent, not helpful. And then there's violence against nature, right? Mm-hmm. Violence against nature. Are we having some technical difficulties?
The volume is a little soft.
Oh, okay.
Can you use the
all right.
microphone?
I guess we need to use the microphone, huh?
Oh, okay. We have a microphone.
We do have a
Sorry to
microphone.
interrupt. I was listening
I
to
was
it
trying
upstairs.
okay, I was trying to make sure everybody else got heard too, because I like interaction in my
We
talks.
would hear it too, right?
Huh?
It's just so I was listening to it
Yeah, no, what I'm
upstairs,
saying,
so-
even though you have the microphone plugged in, I think you'll still hear us.
Okay, all right. Well,
If
that's
we
what I
ask.
wanted to be sure. Okay.
Oh, there we
good.
go. Yeah, that's probably it.
Thank you. Hopefully that is better on the sound.
I'll go upstairs.
Okay. Huh? Okay, that's true. Okay. We can pass the microphone, yes.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, this is only the second time we're doing this, so we're working out the kinks. Yes, yes. So and then, of course, we can see the active forms of violence in our society. You know, when someone makes a rude gesture, right? When someone shows you the finger, you know, that's pretty active form of violence, right? Or emotional threats or manipulative behavior. Those are active, you can see it. So, but the passive is interesting, and that's something to be conscious and mindful of. And then violence against nature. And I could go on and talk about that for a while, what in terms of going on and the indigenous communities that are standing up and saying, no, we don't want any more building on our sacred mountain. We don't want a huge pipeline going under the Missouri River. No. Yeah. So Gandhi said, anger is like electricity. It is powerful and useful if we use it intelligently. It's destructive and abusive if we use it incorrectly. So we can use it, learn to use it constructively to help society. And Arun Gandhi is saying, what can we use productive anger for? He says constructive, compassionate sharing. And this communication that Marshall Rosenberg developed. And Gandhi says that nonviolence refers to our natural state of compassion when violence has subsided from our hearts. It is our natural state of being. Compassion is. Our Buddha nature, that's right. Yeah. So it takes practice and discipline to stop the violence that we commit. And it takes awareness, and that's what our meditation practice is. It is awareness practice as well of what we are doing and what we can do to change. So this nonviolent communication is a skillful means that Marshall Rosenberg has developed, and that Roshi has also been teaching for the last 3 years at least. And he developed his own name for it called inner disarmament, which makes a lot of sense. So I want to talk to you a little bit about Marshall Rosenberg. He was born in Canton, Ohio, right here in the Midwest, one of our Midwestern sons, right? And according to Wikipedia, which is where I get some of my information from, his mother was a professional bowler with tournaments 5 nights a week. And she was a gambler with high-stakes backers. And he talks about his grandmother a lot in his book, actually, Anna Wiener, who had 9 children. And even though they were living in impoverished circumstances, she ran a settlement house. And she would take in homeless people, people who didn't have any money, any place to stay. There's a story about one time a man named Jesus came to her door, and he said he was hungry, so she, of course, fed him. She asked him his name, and he said, "Jesus the Lord." And she didn't speak English so well, so when someone else asked her who this man was, she said, "Oh, it's Mr. the Lord." And he stayed with her for 7 years. 7 years. And his grandmother loved to dance. And his grandfather worked at I think this was in Detroit, the Packard Motor Company. It was Detroit, yeah. And she taught dance to the workers' kids. Isn't it great? And Marshall's family moved to Detroit in 1943, a week prior to the big Detroit race riots, where 34 people were killed and 433 people were wounded. Just a week before they moved to Detroit, and this happened. So this had a profound influence on his life. And his quote is, "What I want in my life is compassion, a flow between myself and others based on a mutual giving from the heart." This was his vow, what he wanted in his life. And look what he created. Nonviolent communication that has been taught in over 60 countries in the world. And in fact, UNESCO has funded in Yugoslavia teaching tens of thousands of people of all walks of life nonviolent communication. It made me want to go. It makes me want to go to Yugoslavia and see what life is like over there. There is a school that he has established, and his son went to the school. Julie tells a really great story that she read about this. His son went to the school, and then he went to a public school. And Julie, I think you have to tell this story, okay, because I really like it. His school for nonviolent communication.
Okay. His son had long hair. and maybe a ponytail or something. And he ended up going to the public school after the nonviolent communication school. And he had an incident with a teacher or an adult there. And he came home and he basically kind of got made fun of or yelled at for his long hair by this adult. And he came home and he's telling his dad about it. And Marshall's like, well, what did you do, or what happened? And he's like, well, Dad, I kind of felt sorry for the man because he had no hair.
Right, so he received his PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And he developed this form of mediation and communication skills. This is what NVC is all about. And he just passed away last February at his home with his wife and his children by his side. I think that's a beautiful way to go. So these two questions preoccupied his life. What happens to disconnect us from our compassionate nature, leading us to behave violently and exploitatively? What happens to disconnect us from our compassionate nature, leading us to behave violently and exploitatively? And the second question was, what allows some people to stay connected to their compassionate nature under even the most trying circumstances? And this is what he studied. So, in nonviolent communication, the purpose is really to learn what you already know how to do, right? It's really it's to connect in a way to make natural giving possible. And he says it's in our nature to enjoy giving and receiving compassionately. It is in our nature. You're looking a little quizzical there, Mark.
I was thinking about a quote from William Foster, only connect.
Only connect. Even in the midst of conflict. I love that. Only connect. And this practice of meditation gives us the courage to do that. Gives us the space and courage to be able to stay connected in the midst of conflict. And now through this, we're learning some skills on how to speak so that we stay connected. So having an open heart is definitely part of the equation, a big part of the equation. Yes, how to remain human even under trying conditions, right? That's the something to aspire to. Yeah. All right, so the principle of NVC is to give and receive compassionately and do everything we can to let others know that this is our only motive. This is our only motive. We want to just give and receive compassionately. So he developed these great puppets, really great puppets to use. And on YouTube, he's on YouTube. There's a lot of stuff of him on YouTube. And he also has a guitar and he sings, which is fabulous. We were so lucky to... Roshi and I... They are.
Roshi and I were very lucky to hear Marshall when we were working with Bernie Glassman in Santa Barbara. And we went to a workshop with him, a weekend workshop, and then we had a circle, a study circle around NVC that continued for us to practice. And he had his puppets, and he had his guitar, and he was so wonderful, just really wonderful. So he has these two animals as metaphors for how we communicate. There's a giraffe and there's a jackal. And so he chose the giraffe, and let me see, he chose the giraffe because in terms of how we communicate consciously and compassionately, because giraffes have got the largest heart of land mammals. You know, they got that long neck, right, to pump up the blood to the head, right? And so even though it has a long neck, it's vulnerable, and it can see a wider view, taller view. They're up there. And giraffes do not worry about right or wrong or keeping score. Oh, keeping score. I used to do that a lot. Keeping score, right? Oh my God. Okay. And when they listen to human beings, they only hear a please or a thank you. So being very open. Only hearing please. Even people are distressed and yelling, they're hearing a please there. And the jackals is used as a metaphor for consciousness that is concerned primarily with being right and giving others a lot of advice. I know that one too, right? Right. And so jackals do not know how to get their needs met. And that's why... And the way they act is they are always yelling at each other, calling people names. You're an idiot, right? You're an idiot. They just like to call people names, and that ensures that certainly their needs are not going to be met. And jackals are also simply giraffes with a language problem. So he uses those in his trainings, and we'll get back to this. So there are 4 components of nonviolent communication that we will be going through in the class. The first one is observation without judgment or evaluation. And this takes practice. Observation without judgment or evaluation. That's the same thing as our first tenet of a peacemaker, being open. Because if you already know that the person is wrong, you put them in a box, and there's no way that communication will happen. So it's just the facts, What happened? You're observing. You're not putting any judgment on that. This is what happened. The second thing is then feeling, stating how we're feeling about what happened. And right there, that's a whole nother education. Because I think our whole lifetime, or many of us, I don't know, some of you may have had more enlightened parents, but for most of our lifetime, we have really not been taught to feel here. We've been taught to think here. And so we're, for most of us, really not in touch with our feelings. And in fact, there's a list of feelings and, how we are likely to feel when our needs are met versus when they are not met. And, I remember, and even still, it's like, well, how am I feeling? I say, thank goodness there's a list I can go through and maybe hit the right one, right? Because really, if we're not trained to trust and to feel, we forget that that is important. This is important. Our hearts are important. Yeah, I go, so when was the last time you felt afraid or discouraged or horrified? These are feelings when our needs are not being met. These are the feelings that arise. Sorrowful, irked, irritated, distressed, disturbed. We're not used to, like, I'm a mother. I don't have feelings. I'm here to support my children. Whatever they need, I will do. Me, what? I don't know. I don't know what I'm feeling. I'm a father. I'm not supposed to cry, right? I don't. Whatever those trainings, those education we had from our parents are deeply ingrained. And so it's learning a new way of being, NVC is, and it's a very skillful way. Now, these are the feelings that we have when our needs are being met, right? We are adventurous, we feel ecstatic, glorious, happy, energetic. These are the feelings we feel. I have to read these. Thankful, joyful, right? Thank goodness for this list. It's really helped me try to really kind of find what am I feeling and being precise about it. So that's the second step, the second component of nonviolent communication. The third is our needs, knowing what our needs are. Now, this is a whole nother area. Needs, what are those, right? I had to look at the list again. What needs do I have? Well, yeah, I need food, I need air, I need water. What else do I need? Does anybody have other needs they could suggest?
Companionship.
Companionship, that is a need, yes. Anybody else have a need they want to share? Love. Yes, a need for love. Yes. Anybody else?
To be heard.
Need to be heard. Yes, I know. Need to be. One of my hula students has a 2-year-old, and she says if she doesn't have her full attention on him, he starts kicking, throwing things at her. Need for attention, right? For attention. What about need for integrity, respect? Those are big ones. Kind of forget about those. We kind of just don't think about it. But these are basic life-serving needs that we have. Need for celebration. We need for music, for dancing. The need for that. Playing, clowning around, exercising, right? Rest, sleep, a need for sleep, right? So these are life-serving needs, and if any of these needs are not being met, these feelings will come up. Fatigued, fearful, jittery, tired, apprehensive, anxious. Our needs are not being met. It's pretty simple. This is going to happen. When our needs are met, these needs are met, then we are enlivened. We're glad, delighted. These are our different feelings. So we're working on that, identifying what our needs are. Life-serving needs, we all have them. And then the fourth component of nonviolent communication, where you're trying to stay connected, especially in a conflict situation, is a request. You make a request. Simply that. What concrete actions are you wanting from the other person that would enrich your life and make life more wonderful for both of us? These are the four components of nonviolent or compassionate communication. And it takes practice, right? How are you feeling? I don't know, right? Right? So, there is communication that blocks compassion. We call it the 4 Ds of disconnection. I think it's called it, yeah, 4 Ds of disconnection. Life alienating communication. So the first is diagnosis. This is where you diagnose and label a person as being wrong, bad, evil. It's any kind of judgment or put down. Diagnosing. I'm right, you're wrong, right? It's D, diagnosis. And I think we were raised in this kind of world of right and wrong and being very absolute about that. So I call that closed box thinking. Closed box thinking. Some examples are if someone pulls out of you in traffic, what an idiot, right? That's diagnosis right there. What an idiot, right? Or if a teacher assigns you a lot of homework, she's mean, right? It's their fault. Okay, that's the second one. The second D is denial of responsibility. It's never your fault. It's everybody else's fault. So when we use words like have to, I have to clean my room, or makes one feel, you make me feel guilty. That's like denying your personal responsibility in the equation.
So I have to clean my room denies my responsibility.
I have to. Why? Some impersonal force is making me.
Oh,
I have to.
It isn't that I chose to do it.
Yes, I choose to clean my room because I feel better in it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so there's a so it's really kind of subtle, but that makes one feel, right? Like, and I got these other cute little puppets when I was there. Look at these cute puppets, these finger puppets. You know, it's really great with kids, right? Because this is where they learn. I like this. You make me feel really guilty when you cry. What? What? Right, so we do that a lot, right? You made me sad. You made me angry. While that situation might have been a stimulus for that anger to arise, once it arises, because we're human, right? We have an amygdala keeping us safe, right? But once it arises, you have the power to determine the course of action from there. And that's kind of a hard one to separate, actually. Right? Okay, yeah, you were the stimulus for making you really angry. But do I have to keep going down that road? No. I can take a breath, calm down the amygdala, and then be more proactive. You know, when you run out in the street, wrong one, right? When you run out in the street, I feel worried because I don't want you to be run over by a car. Okay, Mom. Okay, Dad, we'll do it. We won't run out in the street anymore. Instead of, you make me really angry. You're going to get a big beating for that. Right. And Marshall doesn't believe in any kind of punishment, which is interesting because you have to really then walk this talk here of NVC to be able to do that skillfully. So, denial of responsibility, words like have to or makes one feel is not useful here. And when we deny personal responsibility, we attribute the cause to other people, the actions of others. You made me be mean to my sister. You made me be mean, right? Or to the dictates of authority. My boss said to lie, so I did. Or the Nazis, right? I was just doing my job. Or to group pressure. Group pressure. I didn't do my homework because nobody else was doing it. Versus, what would that be? I chose not to do my homework because
I didn't want to.
I didn't want to. I was afraid to, or I didn't feel. I was what?
Because going to the movies is more fun.
Because going to the movie is more fun. Right. That's what I call honest. Right. And also to uncontrollable impulses. Like I was overcome by the urge to eat that chocolate cake. Right? So, the third D of disconnection is demands. Communicating our desires as demands blocks compassion. Right? So a demand is defined as a request which implicitly or explicitly threatens some form of blame or punishment if the request is not acted upon. Can anybody give me an example of a demand?
The boss wants something done.
The boss wants something done. It seems like it would be to me, it's like, go clean the toilets because I want you to. Or cut your hair because I hate short hair. It's a demand, right? Or no beards allowed. I don't want you to have a beard. That's a demand, right? Eat all the food on your plate.
If you don't do X, I won't do Y.
If you don't go grocery shopping for once, I'm not going to cook.
That's a demand right there. Yes. So demands block compassion and connection. And the last is deserve-oriented language. Thinking based on who deserves what. He deserves to be punished for what he did. What?
It is very difficult in today's political arena.
Good, yeah, so that's a stimulus for, learning. And we're in Chicago, man. This is a place, this is, well, all right. What do you mean? I mean, this is where the rubber meets the road, I think. So the most important part of NVC is just to be clear about what our intention is, to be able to clearly communicate, to stay connected. So we've got a life-affirming communication. We call it the giraffe four-step dance. So the first step is the facts. Describe the situation as it is. Second is say how you feel about what happened. The third is to say what you need or value. And the fourth is asking for something doable now. That's the four-step giraffe dance that we're going to learn and practice. So these four steps are really parallel with the Zen peacemaker's 3 tenets of a peacemaker. So practicing not knowing, right, being open, is describing the facts of what happened. Bearing witness is bearing witness to the feelings that are within you, coming up. And also you want to be empathic with the other person. Can you really listen and empathize with the other person as well and see what feelings might be coming up for them? And the other bearing witness part is the needs, really knowing what you need and value. That's bearing witness to yourself. It's like being there for yourself. And the fourth step of request is the loving action, the action that arises when you do those, the not knowing and bearing witness well. Action will arise that is loving or compassionate or helpful in the situation. I really feel that Marshall's created a work of love, really. A work, from a deep love of humanity and of his own needs. So this is really a language, well, he says it's a language of life, but I also say it's a language of the heart and love. And it takes practice, and we're going to fall off the path, and so we just keep getting back on and keep practicing. So, and we're going to have fun with puppets too. So, anybody have any questions or anything? That's it for my presentation today. Yes, Barbara.
I have another question, Laura. Going back to the Buddha nature, and that compassion is our true self. That some of you know that I do hypnosis. I've been doing hypnosis for almost 30 years. And one of the things that my hypnotist is fond of saying is that hypnosis, which I think is very close to meditation, is really unlearning all the bad stuff that took us away from that original nature. That it's that retraining, not to think as we have been taught to think, but to go back to that original.
Right, so we're changing a habit, really.
It is.
And, you just have to keep practicing it. What do they say? You have to do it 21 days to change a habit. Again, I just so think that the practice of sitting really helps us to stay with it, as well as become more aware.
Thanks, June. I loved your talk. Like you're just saying, and piggybacking this idea of sitting and the awareness, it sounds like a lot of what I heard has so much to do with our own relationship to how we're feeling. And like Robert's talk last week about forgiveness, that such a part of that process would be having, I think the way he put it was like having the courage to feel the pain of the situation that then has made you upset. Like you were talking about when you were reading off the list of feelings. I feel like, we don't have necessarily really a relationship with ourselves in a way that allows us to, I guess what I'm trying to say is when I think about people who communicate compassionately, they're comfortable with themselves, They're not feeling like they need to blame because it's so much, it's already a part of their own nature to feel like, sort of a relationship with how they are feeling. And I just feel like that's not something that is taught very, very much. And anyways, I just loved it. I also was thinking, though, when you talk about basic needs, like, it's one thing for having an interpersonal conflict, and then another one, your safety, your sense of protection. Like, you started this talking about gun violence, and imagining that if you don't have just a basic sense that you're going to be okay walking outside, how much is already stacked against you. And so it's like a different process when you're at home and your life isn't threatened, but how that changes just literally 2 blocks, east of where we're sitting right now. That was affecting me a lot too. I was just going to share that.
Safety is definitely a need that we have.
I'm curious about, for children, what age would this, what would be an appropriate time to teach this? Because it doesn't seem like an easy question to answer. A lot of our feelings are unconscious, really, when we first start getting in touch with it. We have to struggle and find out what that feeling is. But is there an age that would be appropriate for children to learn this?
Right.
Well, I was going to say, I have 2 girls, 8 and 6, and I was surprised in kindergarten right away now they start them off with this similar thing, nonviolent communication and reporting bullies, and if somebody starts bullying, you stand around silently and watch it, which is similar to bearing witness. And it's like, it seems like it's pretty sophisticated now, just, even in the public schools, so I was kind of impressed with that.
And I was going to say, I think that when you start off from the very beginning, letting kids feel like their emotions are true, that it's okay to feel that way, that you, I don't want to say justify this word, that you, what's the word I'm looking for?
Honored, maybe, honored.
That we
Their feelings met.
And that, that it's, okay. I think that's a way that you could start off right from the start.
Right, if we're more in touch with our feelings and needs, I think that's a big one right there. Mm-hmm.
I took Roshi's course a year or so ago, and because we had the little booklet, I took the booklet with me on a vacation with my daughter, because she and I have not always communicated well. And I felt very awkward at first because I had to think, okay, now, what's step 1, step 2, steps, but even though it was awkward for me, having that 4-step process caused me to pause, just to wait for a moment. Of course, I was thinking, okay, what do I say now? How does this work? What do I get in touch with? But I paused, and I observed her, and I repeated back what she had said. And in some cases, just doing that created a real difference because she heard what she had said. So step one in itself is really remarkable, to pause and repeat back the situation or the words.
And she's feeling listened to. She's feeling heard.
Absolutely, yes, yes.
Which is something big.
That validates the other person right away, like, wow, I'm in a near conflict, but this person actually listened to me. Yeah.
Keeping connected. Yeah, Roshi likes to talk about this beautiful quote by Rumi that I also love. Right, now I have to just find it. It's about, there's a field beyond right and wrong, and I'll meet you there. Yeah. I think that's it. All right, so we'll see you.